Hi, how are you doing? I'm doing great because today I'm here with my November wrap up. How has November already come to an end? Do you know that? I don't. But I did read quite a bit in November, not a whole lot, but still a decent amount. So let's just get into the stats. So in total, I read 11 books this month, which amounted to 4,026 pages read, which is an average of 266 pages per book and 134.2 pages per day. Then for format, I read 3 books I own, 3 ebooks, 3 galleys from NetGalley, and 2 library books. Then for rating, this is abysmal. I don't even want to talk about it. November was my birthday month, and like it shouldn't have attacked me like this, but it did. So I have 2 1 stars, 4 2 stars, 2 3 stars, and 3 4 stars. That's right, no 5 stars. In my birthday month, shouldn't be allowed. But the average rating is a 2.54. Abysmal. So for age range, we have 1 middle grade, 2 new adult books, and 8 adult books. And for genre, I read 2 fantasy, 7 contemporaries, and 2 mystery thrillers. But yeah, let's just get into the books that I read this month, starting off with Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to. This one has been on my TBR since it came out, and I've been very excited to read it ever since it came out, and I just never got around to it because it's also been very intimidating to me. And then Spookhopoly last month actually forced me to pick it up. I just didn't manage to finish it in time before the end of October, so I finished it before so I finished it right as November started, and I really enjoyed this. I truly did not be so scared of this for so long because this honestly was really good. I love our main character, Alex Stern. I thought she was such a great protagonist, and just especially within the context that she's in, I feel like she's very interesting. She has a unique and different perspective on things that just makes it fun to read. And then I feel like this book is basically 3 mysteries packed into one, and the way we kind of like switched in between those and the way all 3 of them just kind of happened, I really liked. I feel like we spent enough time with each one so that it really felt like balanced in a way. I feel like oftentimes when I was balancing like 3 different mysteries like that, I can often feel like one is like the main one and then the other 2 can feel a bit neglected, but I feel like all 3 of them kind of got their own time, and then the way it was all brought together in the end and kind of how different things ended up tying together, I just thought was so masterfully done. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. The only reason why this wasn't a 5-star for me is just because when it comes to the magic system and the secret society stuff, I feel like we just get enough to understand the basic mysteries in this one, but I just felt like I wanted a bit more from that to just not feel as lost as I did throughout this sometimes. Then next we have my biggest accomplishment of this month, and that's Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas, which I give 2 to 5 stars to. I think I originally started reading this in July, and then I don't know, I got a bit burned out by it and I dropped reading it for a little bit, and then because I read it as an ebook from my library, it had to be returned, and then there was like a hole in it for like really long time, so I wasn't able to actually get it back until now. I wasn't the biggest fan of this, which is kind of annoying because I do feel like a good book is in here. It's very hidden, it's very bogged down by a lot of shit. I feel like Sarah J. Maas has created a world that is a bit too large within this book, and there's just too many characters, and I feel like they didn't all need their own storylines going on in this one, which sadly enough they did get, and it just made this so boring because frankly I didn't care about like half of these characters, and and just their storylines weren't that interesting. And because all of these characters are in different parts of the world before they like come together, they all need to learn the same information before they come together and defeat the big bad. So we as a reader learn the same information like 5 different times, and it gets so boring and so repetitive at times. And I truly feel like if this book was cut down in size and we followed like our 3 main protagonists from the beginning of the series, I feel like that would have made this book feel much more tighter and much more action-packed, more fun, and a much more satisfying resolution to the series than this eventually ended up being. So yeah, it was a 2-star just because I was so bored while reading this book. But honestly, for how big this is, I read this relatively quickly. Then next I read the big book of the moment, The Pumpkin Spice Café by Laurie Gilmore, which I gave 2 to 5 stars to, sadly enough. This is like the fall book, and it has been for like a year, so I was very excited to check it out, and personally it just didn't really work for me. for the most time I was having a pretty fun time with it, as in it wasn't like anything like special, but it was a fun like cozy quick read with incel love to the max. But I was having a fun time, especially with kind of like the quirky small town and everything. But all throughout like the first like chunk of this book, the male main character kind of like kept saying and doing things that did give me just a tiny bit of an ick, but like it was tiny enough that I could overlook it. But then in like the last third of this book, and especially within the third act conflict, he just went all the way to the max. And it also puts those earlier things that give me like a slight ick a different perspective. I'm just like, oh no, you're just like a terrible human being, you're trash, I don't like you, I hate you so much. And just my enjoyment of this book dwindled because of that. Then next I read The It Girl by Ruth Ware, which I gave 1 star to. I was really not vibing with it, but Ruth Ware is a hit or miss author for me, always has been, very well documented on the channel. But I haven't had a 1 star by her. I allow half. This just was so boring. I already don't remember too much about it, and you know, not that much time has passed. It was such a bore, and like almost nothing happened. And then the only thing I was interested in for the most part were like the chapters from the past timeline, which we got every so often. I didn't think those were interesting, but then ultimately in the way things went down, those chapters ended up being completely irrelevant. So who cares that I semi liked them, because they shouldn't have been in the book. They were just a waste of page time. And then I wasn't a big fan of the main character. I thought she was just like pathetic, and I don't like using that word as to especially describe a female main character, but that's truly the only way to describe anything she does in this book, just pathetic. And then, you know, Ruth Ware has this thing where I've never read a book by her, and I've almost read all of them now, where I actually like the ending. And needless to say, this wasn't an exception. This probably was my least favorite ending of them, just because it came so completely out of nowhere, and we don't even get everything answered. We don't even get a proper motive. We get a guess at a motive, but not an actual motive. So, you know, I thought this was bad. Then next, I read All I Want Is You by Falon Ballard, which I gave 4 to 5 stars as soon as I got it from NetGalley. This was my first Christmas read of the year, and I really enjoyed it. This, weirdly enough, because I honestly don't think this is like the best thing I've ever read, because especially again, this is one of the books where I really wasn't the biggest fan of the male main character. I thought the romance was a bit underdeveloped. It's a second chance, but I feel like it is solely based on the fact that these two are creatively better when they are together, and then they just have great sex. That's emphasized time and time again just how great sex they have. And that felt like the only basis for their relationship, both in the past and in the present. So I don't know. And then we get the reason why they initially broke up, and I feel like we never really moved past that. Like there was nothing in this book that actually showed that they growed from that they resolved that or anything. They just got together again, and I don't know. So, like, objectively, this wasn't good. But is this the most fun I've had reading a book in a while? Yes. Do I stand by this rating still at the end of the month? Yes. Like, honestly, I flew through this. I had such a blast. I was so invested. I cried at a certain point. And I don't know what was in this, but it was just perfect for me. Then next I read Daisy Hates, The Great Undoing by Jessa Hastings, which I also gave a 4 to 5 stars to. This is the 4th book in the Magnolia Parks universe, the 2nd book following Daisy. And these books are my favorite in the series. I just enjoyed them so much more, and this was no exception. I had so much fun reading this book. I love Daisy and Christian and their relationship. They're not the healthiest, but compared to Magnolia and BJ, they are just what doctors recommend, you know? It's just such a breath of fresh air, and I love them with all my being. I root for them every single turn. I think their love story truly is tragic, and I'm so invested in them. And then I also just like love the storyline in this one. I feel like because we are more like the organized crime part of this world instead of like the socialite part of this world, I feel like it allows itself to be a bit more high stakes, to up the antes a little bit in a way that generally just like feels realistic in some way. And therefore this was just such a great read, and I had a blast. These are, I want to say my guilty pleasures, but like not really, because I'm not guilty about it at all. Next we have another Christmassy read, and it's the Holiday Honeymoon Switch by Julia McKay, which I give 2 to 5 stars to, and is a Gallica from Nut Galley. This one was just a fine read for me, very middle of the road. I did think it was fun, Christmassy. I like the friendship that's kind of at the center of this one, because we follow 2 best friends, and I feel like their friendship was really strong, and I like that aspect to it. I do also like the 2 different settings. I just thought the switch between the 2 was like really interesting, and they were balanced really well, and it just was a really fun, quick read. But I do think like the romances were a bit underdeveloped. I wasn't the biggest fan of one of the 2 main characters. I didn't dislike her, I don't know, didn't like her that much. Yeah, overall it just kind of felt a bit meh to me, so I don't have that much to say about it. Then I read The Cinnamon Bun Bookstore by Laurie Gilmore, which I gave it 5 stars to. This is the second in the pumpkin spice world. All these different characters though, they're like standalone romances that are just set in the same small town, and this had a very similar trajectory to the Pumpkin Spice Cafe for me, where I really enjoyed the first like 2/3 of this book, where I like the setup for the romance in this one. I thought it was really interesting, and it's kind of like a bit scavenger hunty with like different things they have to do, and I think that was just a fun way to kind of like frame the story, and I liked the different activities they did throughout this book. I also quite liked the romance in this one. It is again a bit like not the best developed, but I don't know, I like that dynamic a lot. But with the last third, like the title conflict and everything, I just grew to despise our female main character this time. A bit of it was true. I thought she was insufferable and like so selfish. And honestly, the third conflict is a case of severe miscommunication, but not in a sense where it's like, oh yeah, I understand how you could like, I don't know, sometimes you read miscommunication and you're like, oh yeah, this is frustrating but realistic. This one, it's just like, girl, you're just not listening. You're just completely not listening. You're just making up your own shit and just like purposely misunderstanding what he's saying. And that just got so annoying, and I hated it so much. Now, if you don't like unpopular opinions, skip to the Lex book. Timestamps are always in the description, so you could have done that anyway. But Lex, I read every book. That book, they didn't even want me to talk about it. Next, I read Everywhere Villains by MLVO, which I gave 3 stars to. This is another one that's been on my TBR for a really long time, but solely because everybody and their mother loves this. Like, and it's not even because it's been out for a while. It's not even that people who read this back when it was released loved it then. I still see people that whose reviews I trust read this year, still absolutely adore this, and I truly, I'm sorry, I don't get it. It was a 3 star, so it's not like I think this was a bad book. I just feel like this was just a whole lot of nothing. Like, nothing happened in this book. Nothing. And like the very little that did happen was so incredibly predictable. I don't know, I was so bored while reading this. There were aspects to it that I did enjoy. Like I said, it's a 3 star because I can recognize that objectively this isn't a bad book, and I did have a decent enough time with this. It's not that I can say like with some of the other books that I gave lower ratings, I'm like, I actually think this was bad about it. That's not the case with this. I just think it's a whole lot of nothing. But yeah, let's just move on to something, I was gonna say more positive, but that's also not in the cards right now. The next book I read is The Christmas Tree Farm by Laurie Gilmore, which I gave 1 of 5 stars to, and this guy got from Nut Galley. Next book in the series, a different couple. Hated this one though. This did not go the same trajectory. Hated this from the start. I honestly think this was bad. With the other 2 books in the series, I could say like, oh yeah, you know, I personally had issues with it, but I can totally understand people like having a fun time with this, because I had for the most part too. It just went downhill for me, but it's like personal preference things. This one is just objectively bad, and I don't trust you if you say you like this one, because the thing is, a female main character is so inconsistently written. I genuinely feel like the author came up with a different personality for this girl every scene she was in, and it contradicted each other so much, and that's not character development, that's just bad writing. Then the male main character was a doormat, which was part of his storyline, but he was a doormat for everyone, not just his ex, as his book twice to make it out to be, and even in the end he's still very much a doormat. I'm genuinely convinced this man has never taken a decision of his own in his life. He always just does what other people want him to do, and I don't know, that's also pro writing. There was no chemistry between the 2 leads. The romance truly came out of nowhere. It's not even incel love, it just poofed. There was nothing, not even an attempt at development there. The third conflict was one of the most stupid third conflicts I've ever read, and I've never been a big fan of third conflict. And then the resolution was so incredibly quick as well, and I don't know, I should have DNF'd this. I just didn't want to. And then we have arrived to the final book I read in November, and I wish I could say we're ending on a positive note, but also like not really. This one just really wasn't positive. But the last book I read this month is Applaus for Milo by Hetty, which I give 2 stars to. This is the new Milo book. Milo is a Flemish TV show, and they do these tie-in books. And this one just really didn't work for me. This is a direct sequel to the one that I already wasn't the biggest fan of that I read a couple months ago, because there's 2 other ones, one that I didn't really enjoy and one that I loved. Sadly enough, this is a sequel to the one that I didn't really like that much, but with that one I could say like it's a decent book. It's just written for children, and I'm not a child, so I'm not getting out of it what you're supposed to. This one I didn't think it was that great. This also feels like such a weird book, because that first one was obviously written before like any of the show was made at all, so the writer had like barely any context clues, and so it's completely uncanon. And then this one is obviously written with the author having seen some of the show, and it exists in this weird place between the canon of the show and the canon of book 1, which completely contradict each other at some points. So it feels like this book exists in a very weird place. But that aside, I also just think that the plot of this one was just really thin. There barely was anything to grasp onto. And yeah, that was my very sad November reading wrap-up. There were some books I did enjoy in here. I forget about that when I have to talk so negatively about books in a row. But overall, I wasn't having a good time this month. So I apologize for this being a letdown. And yeah, that's everything for today. Let me know in the comments what you think of these books if you've... That doesn't make sense. Let me know in the comments what you thought of these books if you've read some or saw some of the books you read in November, and then I'll see you next time. Bye.